welcome, dear listener. Find a comfortable place to rest and let the day gently fade behind you. Tonight, you don't need to solve anything or be anywhere else. Ahead of you is a quiet bus stop beneath soft rain and warm golden light. A place where every sound slows down and every thought feels a little lighter. This story is here to keep you company, to soften the noise in your mind, and to guide you calmly toward rest. Take a slow breath in and let it go. You're safe here. Let the night take care of the rest. The rain had a way of softening everything, not just the pavement, not just the rooftops, but thoughts. The kind of thoughts that circle quietly at night, looping and wandering, searching for places to land and finding none. The bus stop sat at the edge of the quiet road, half sheltered beneath a curved metal roof, the raindrops tracing gentle silver paths across it. A faint glow from the nearby street lamp turned every droplet into a tiny star that fell and disappeared. It wasn't crowded. It never was at this hour. Just the soft rustle of rain, just the rhythmic breathing of the world, just that peaceful kind of night that never asks anything from you. A bench waited beneath the shelter, the paint slightly worn, edges smooth from years of resting travelers. The timetable on the post flickered gently, its digital numbers glowing a calm, steady blue. Far down the road, the outlines of distant houses blurred behind curtains of rain. Their windows shone faintly, like quiet lanterns left burning for comfort rather than for light. And here, at this small bus stop, time seemed to slow down, the way dreams slow when they begin to form. A faint scent drifted through the air, wet leaves, rain, kissed asphalt, the distant hint of fresh earth waking quietly beneath the storm. The night accepted the rain without resistance, letting it fall freely without hurry. It was a sound that didn't interrupt, only softened. Like the hush someone gives in a library, not to silence you, but to remind you everything is already peaceful. The puddles on the street shimmered with reflections of passing headlights. When a car rolled by, its motion left ripples that smoothed themselves almost immediately, as if the water knew how to settle more quickly than thoughts sometimes could. You sit down on the bench, and in that moment, the world gives you permission to rest. Your shoulders ease. Your breathing follows the gentle rhythm of the rain. Every drop becomes a reminder that things don't always need to be held together tightly. Sometimes it's enough to simply sit and be. Across the road, the faint silhouette of a tree bends slightly, not fighting the wind, only swaying with it. A soft murmuring of branches passes overhead. Somewhere far away, a train horn hums through the layers of night and dissolves gently into distance. Everything around you seems to whisper the same message. You don't have to think so hard right now. You don't have to solve anything tonight. Let the rain soften everything. The bus will come eventually, or maybe it won't for a while. Either way, here, in this small corner of quiet rain, there is space to simply breathe and rest and drift slowly into warmth, stillness, and calm. Tonight, the bus stop belongs to peace, and so do you. The first drop did not fall with noise. It simply appeared, as though the sky had paused for a moment, gathered its thoughts, and decided gently, yes, now is the right time. It touched the pavement with a soft, almost respectful landing. Then another followed, and another. Soon the quiet road, the small town, and the old bus stop felt wrapped inside a spreading hush, the kind of hush that doesn't erase sound, but softens it until everything feels like a slow, calming exhale. The bus stop sat just beyond the last cluster of houses, where the roofs gave way to open fields and the town gradually forgot to be busy. It wasn't grand or imposing. A curved metal roof, 2 glass panels, a simple wooden bench, all shaped by years of weather and waiting. But in its simplicity, there was something deeply comforting, like a familiar blanket folded and kept ready. Every time it rained here, something gentle stirred. The world did not quiet because it had to. It quieted because the rain invited it to. The sound on the roof was steady, soft, rhythmic. Tiny droplets gathered, merged, slid downward, and disappeared along the edges. The bus stop seemed to hold the rain the way hands hold warm tea, carefully, gratefully. Nothing rushed. Nothing felt urgent. Even cars passing by seemed to understand. Their wheels whispered instead of roared. The headlights weren't sharp beams. They glowed, spreading softly across the damp asphalt, turning puddles into pools of gold and amber reflections. The bench inside the shelter had become smooth in places, shaped quietly by the weight of people who had rested there over years, people who had arrived tired, hopeful, unsure, or simply curious. Some carved initials into the wood. Some leaned back and closed their eyes. Some traced raindrops on the glass with one absent-minded finger while thinking about things they didn't have words for. And the rain listened. It didn't ask for explanations. It didn't offer advice. It simply softened the edges of everything. Beyond the road, fields stretched out, their grasses tall and endlessly patient. In the rain they bowed slightly, shimmering, each blade catching droplets that trembled at the tips before falling softly to the earth. If you watched long enough, it began to feel as though even the fields themselves were breathing, slowly rising, slowly settling. Here and there, trees stood like quiet guardians. Their leaves rustled gently as rain filtered through them, making a soft layered music. Roof, leaves, glass, puddle, each creating its own rhythm, all blending together. Somewhere within that soundscape lived a sense of deep reassurance. You are safe here. You can rest. A faint scent of wet soil rose, mixed with the earthy fragrance of moss and the delicate sweetness of wildflowers hiding among the grasses. It was the kind of scent that reminded people of childhood memories they had forgotten they remembered. Warm kitchens, quiet evenings, and the feeling of returning home. Just across the road, the old brick wall held its history quietly. Moss softened its corners. Rain slid slow paths down the brick, leaving darker streaks that made everything look older, wiser, and somehow calmer. Behind it, a small garden lived, not ordered, not symmetrical, simply allowed to exist. Lavender leaned outward. Mint spread gently. Tiny white flowers glowed under the lamplight like small stars close to earth. Sometimes a breeze would carry their scents through the rain toward the bus stop, so faint you had to breathe carefully to notice, and that alone could make a person feel held, like an unseen reassurance resting lightly on their shoulders. The bus stop had watched countless evenings like this. People came, people left. Buses stopped, sighed, and rolled onward. But the rain remained the constant companion, always patient, always soothing. There were nights when no one waited there at all. Those were the nights the bus stop belonged solely to sound, to the tender percussion of droplets, to the whisper of wind, to the quiet hum of the world calming itself down. Even empty, the place did not feel lonely. It felt reflective, like the pause between one breath and the next. On evenings when someone did sit beneath the shelter, something subtle always seemed to happen. Thoughts that had been moving too fast began to slow. Shoulders eased downward. The mind, usually crowded with unfinished sentences, softened into longer pauses. The rain outside became a companion, wordless, gentle, endlessly understanding. Above, clouds stretched in long, velvety layers, deep gray mixed with muted silver. They held the night softly instead of closing it off. The occasional shimmer of lightning, far beyond the hills, never threatened. It stayed distant, like a memory someone else was having far away. Street lamps blinked themselves awake as dusk slowly slipped into evening. Their glow warmed everything. In the wet glass of the shelter, reflections shimmered faint, shifting images of rain, fields, sky, and the silhouettes of trees. Looking into the glass sometimes felt like looking into a different world, one made entirely of softness. Drops scattered across the glass and slid downward in slow, perfect trails. Some drifted straight, others curved, meandering, touching one another and merging gently. Where they crossed, tiny rivers formed, quiet patterns that faded just as beautifully as they appeared. It was impossible to rush anything here. There was only presence, only the simple, grounding awareness that this moment exists and it is peaceful, and that is enough. Every once in a while, the distant sound of a train rolled across the fields, a low, comforting resonance, almost like a deep hum wrapped in velvet. It came, passed gently, and faded, leaving the night even softer than before. Birds tucked beneath branches rustled slightly, then stilled again, absorbing themselves into rest. The world, in its patient way, kept whispering reassurance. Slow down, breathe, stay as long as you need. For travelers, the bus stop was simply a point on the map. For the tired, it became something close to sanctuary, a place where time didn't hurry, where overthinking loosened its grip, where life paused without asking permission. And all the while, the rain kept falling, not to wash things away, but to cover them with quiet. Buses arrived when they did. The doors opened with gentle sighs. Warm interior air drifted outward, scented like fabric that had carried conversations across miles. The driver always seemed a little softer here, too, speaking in quieter tones, as though the rain had also touched their mood. But sometimes people chose not to board at all. Sometimes they simply watched the bus come and go, realizing in that quiet space that movement wasn't always necessary. That sitting beneath a gentle shelter, with rain surrounding you like a soft blanket, could be its own kind of journey. As twilight deepened, the fields darkened into a wide expanse of blue-gray. Fireflies appeared along the edges, blinking their tiny lights, as if joining the conversation of raindrops. Their flickers were never frantic, always patient, appearing, pausing, reappearing again. The bus stop lamp glowed warmer against the dark. Moths traced slow arcs around it. The puddles at the curb grew deeper, catching reflections of sky and light like still lakes in miniature. Rings spread outward with every drop, perfect circles that expanded, overlapped, dissolved, over and over again, endlessly gentle. The town behind the bus stop carried its own quiet music. Distant doors closing softly, someone laughing faintly inside, the echo of plates being set onto a table. All of it transformed by the rain, distant, muted, cozy, like glimpses into 100 small lives unfolding peacefully at once. And through it all, the bus stop remained, simply existing, not demanding attention, not changing much, just offering itself as shelter, as pause, as invitation. If someone were to arrive burdened, the place would not ask them to be different. It would simply wrap them in the sound of rain against roof and glass, letting the tension melt one drop at a time. If someone arrived happy, the rain didn't quiet their joy, it deepened it, grounding it, giving it calm roots. If someone arrived unsure, the stillness offered permission to not decide anything right away. That was the quiet magic of the place. It didn't try to fix anything, yet somehow, gently, things softened. The night drifted onward. The rain slowed, then strengthened, then softened again, like breathing. The air moved with it, cool, refreshing, tender. The fields glistened beneath the dimness. The world seemed wrapped inside a single, peaceful thought. And above the wooden bench, beneath the curved metal roof, every sound continued to whisper, every raindrop carrying the same patient message to anyone who listened. You don't have to rush anymore. You don't have to hold everything at once. You are allowed to rest here for as long as you need. And somehow, without being dramatic, without being extraordinary, the bus stop became extraordinary anyway, simply because it offered something the world so often forgot. A place where rain softened every sound, and in doing so, softened every heart that paused beneath it. The rain had settled into a rhythm by the time evening became night. Not heavy, not hurried, just steady, like a calm heart beating somewhere inside the sky. The bus stop, wrapped in that rhythm, felt even more like a cocoon now. The outside world dimmed, softened, blurred gently as mist rose from the warm pavement and drifted upward in small, wavering curls. Lamps created halos around themselves. Shadows faded into one another, losing edges, becoming comfortable rather than mysterious. Inside the shelter, the wooden bench held a faint warmth left by the day. The air carried the scent of rain-soaked fields, mingled with the subtle sweetness of the nearby garden. Somewhere nearby, water trickled into a storm drain, a soft, slow echo, barely noticeable unless you listened closely. Time seemed to stretch, not endlessly, just enough that it no longer mattered where the day had begun or where tomorrow would lead. Everything important was contained inside this quiet moment. Rain falling, night deepening, and the world finally remembering how to be gentle with itself. Across the road, the garden leaves glistened, each holding on to the rain as though reluctant to let go. Drops gathered along lavender stems, drifting slowly downward, lingering like thoughts that no longer insisted on being solved. The brick wall protected the small patch of earth with loyal patience, bearing the gentle shimmer of water, the way old hands hold memories. The bus stop had always been a watcher of seasons, of small changes, of quiet habits, and tonight it watched again. From one direction down the road, faint footsteps began to appear inside the soundscape, not intrusive, not hurried, simply joining the rain, as natural as another instrument entering a piece of music. The steps approached with pauses between them, as though the person walking often stopped, not from exhaustion, but from wanting to take the night in slowly. Soon, the figure appeared, moving carefully beneath an umbrella, the tip lightly brushing the air with every step. A coat hung loosely, not too tight, not too formal. The person crossed the empty road with measured ease, and then entered the shelter like someone stepping into an old conversation rather than a new place. When they lowered the umbrella, droplets rolled off the edges and landed gently near the bench. They shook a few raindrops from their sleeves and then sat, letting out a slow, unforced sigh, not a sigh of frustration, but of release. For a moment, they said nothing. They simply listened to the rain against the roof, to the faint breeze drifting through the shelter, to the peaceful echo that always existed here, like the memory of all the quiet evenings that had come before. The bus stop had seen this expression many times. Eyes still carrying the residue of thoughts, shoulders holding just a little too much, hands resting uncertainly as though unsure of what to do when they weren't busy. But here, thoughts rarely stayed tangled for long. The person leaned back slightly, resting against the bench. They watched raindrops collect on the glass, then traced one slow droplet with their eyes as it slid downward and merged into another. Something softened inside their posture. Their breathing found a slower rhythm, gradually matching the rain. Beyond the glass, the road shimmered like a ribbon of ink brushed with light. Every passing car, few now and far between, moved softly through puddles, leaving brief ripples of water and a gentle sense of distant travel. Their sounds faded almost immediately, absorbed by the night. The lamplight near the bus stop flickered once, then steadied again, spreading its warm glow across the small shelter. Moths continued their slow, drifting dances, circling not with urgency, but with patient curiosity. When they bumped the glass lightly, the sound was softer than a whisper. A breeze slipped through the open side of the shelter. It carried the scent of wet earth and distant wood smoke, perhaps from some house where a fire glowed quietly in a small hearth. The scent mingled with the rain, creating that comforting feeling of being both outdoors and safe at the same time. The person on the bench closed their eyes briefly, then opened them again, letting their gaze soften rather than focus. Rain tapping above, night breathing slowly, silence that wasn't empty, just deeply kind. The bus stop had learned long ago that people rarely needed grand solutions here. They didn't need answers the way they thought they did when they arrived with minds full of spinning questions. They needed space, and this was a place where space existed without pressure, wide, patient, and unjudging. Outside the shelter, a small puddle near the curb reflected the lamp almost perfectly, as though holding a tiny golden moon in its center. Raindrops broke the reflection one after another, not shattering it, just rearranging it gently, over and over again. The scene became its own kind of quiet story, A sheltered bench, a person resting, a world wrapped gently in rain. A bus eventually appeared in the distance, its headlights glowing softly through the mist, stretching a pale path ahead of it. The hum grew slowly until it arrived, not loud, not startling, simply present. The doors opened with a soft sigh. Warm light spilled outward. The inside looked inviting, filled with gentle upholstery and rows of calm, waiting seats. The driver offered one small nod, a silent question without expectation. The person on the bench looked at the open door. Then they looked back at the rain, not thoughtfully, not indecisively, just curiously. And then, after a second, they smiled softly to themselves, the kind of smile that comes when you realize there's no rush, and stayed seated. The driver nodded again, understanding in the quiet way. People who live around rain often understand things, closed the doors, and continued on. The bus rolled away slowly, its taillights slipping into the mist until they were only a faint ember in the distance. The rain continued. The night deepened further, but instead of feeling darker, it felt thicker with comfort, like layered blankets over a tired body. Further down the road, in the fields, frogs offered small occasional sounds, not croaks of alarm, just contented little murmurs, joining the night in harmony. The trees swayed in nearly imperceptible movements, their leaves gathering and releasing droplets with an unhurried grace. The person's shoulders loosened, their expression softened again. One hand lifted slowly, palm up, as if simply wanting to feel the cool air drifting by. They chuckled faintly at themselves, not mocking, simply acknowledging how rare it felt to sit somewhere with nothing pulling, nothing pushing. The mind behaved differently in places like this. Instead of racing ahead or circling back, thoughts dissolved into sensations, the sound of rain, the visual poetry of lamplight through drops, the comfort of wooden bench beneath tired muscles. No lessons, no conclusions, just presence. Above the shelter, the roof gathered another small collection of droplets, releasing them gently in a rhythmic sequence along the edge, one drop at a time, like thoughtful punctuation added to a silent paragraph. Someone else might have passed by without noticing any of this. But for those who stayed, for those who sat quietly long enough, the rain revealed its secret language, a vocabulary built not of words, but of rhythms and softness. The person shifted slightly, grounding their feet on the damp concrete floor, settling more comfortably. For a while, nothing else happened. The world simply was, and it was enough. A dog barked far away, not sharply, just calling once into the night. Somewhere, a door closed. Somewhere else, a kettle likely began to whisper on a stovetop. Everyday life continued gently, like background notes in a lullaby. The rain flowed over the shelter's roof and trickled down behind it, creating small rivulets that wound their way into the soil. The earth drank, grateful in its quiet way. Grass along the edges stood darker and richer, bending softly under the weight of collected moisture. The person tilted their head, letting their gaze drift upward toward the sky. They couldn't see stars. Clouds covered everything like a soft blanket, but even the absence of stars felt comforting tonight, like being tucked in. Minutes stretched, then drifted away. Another bus approached eventually. Another soft sigh of doors. Another moment of warmth offered and gently declined. The pattern repeated the way waves repeat on a calm shore, predictable, patient, endlessly soothing. There was no sense of missing out by staying, no restlessness tied to motion, just stillness, deep, quiet, healing stillness. For the first time in a long while, the person seemed not to be thinking about the past, not about choices or roads or words spoken or unspoken, not about expectations or plans. The rain had smoothed over those tracks, like water smoothing sand. Instead, the mind drifted in small, tender directions. The sound of childhood rain against window panes, evenings spent watching it pool along gutters, the way life always felt slower and kinder then. A soft breeze passed through, brushing lightly against their cheek. Instinctively, they closed their eyes, not to sleep yet, but to rest more deeply. Their breath matched the rain. Inhale, the faint scent of damp leaves and flowering mint. Exhale, tension leaving quietly, unnoticed except by the body itself. Somewhere deep within the shelter structure, the old wood creaked softly, as though stretching, comfortable, accustomed to rain and time. It was a lived-in sound, friendly. The bus stop seemed happy simply to be hosting someone again, not proud, not needy, simply fulfilled by its purpose, offering pause. The person opened their eyes again, slower this time, as if waking from a nap that had lasted only seconds. The world looked slightly different, not because anything had physically changed, but because calmness reshapes perception gradually and gently. Rain droplets on the glass glowed faintly now, reflecting the warm lamplight like strings of tiny lanterns. Each movement of water across the surface became mesmerizing, graceful, unhurried paths guided by gravity and soft wind. In the garden across the street, the lavender shifted slightly. One droplet released itself from the tip of a bloom, fell, and disappeared quietly into the earth. The world accepted it without drama, another small piece completing its journey. The person smiled again, not at anything specific, just at how peaceful the night felt. A distant clock tower chimed, its sound softened by rain, blended into the surrounding hush. It was impossible to tell whether it marked the present hour or the one just past. And somehow, that uncertainty wasn't unsettling. Time here had become less of a ruler and more of a background suggestion. The idea of waiting changed meaning entirely. Waiting usually meant tension, anticipation, impatience, a sense of delay. But here, waiting became resting. It became observing without analyzing, breathing without effort, being without performing. Another car rolled softly past, water whispering beneath its tires. Its taillights stretched red ribbons across the wet road before disappearing. Silence returned again, as if patiently reclaiming its space. The person at the bus stop finally exhaled deeply, the kind of exhale that happens when the body realizes it does not need to stay on guard anymore. Their shoulders lowered, their jaw relaxed. They leaned back, looked out into the night, and let the rain continue its quiet work, softening every sound, smoothing every thought, creating a sanctuary made not of walls or directions, but of gentle presence. Nothing else needed to happen, and that was precisely why this place mattered. Here, under the curved roof, beside the glass streaked with glistening trails, along the silent edge of a sleeping town, life offered one rare gift, a space to simply exist, slowly, softly, peacefully, with the rain continuing its timeless promise. Stay as long as you want. Night had fully claimed the town, yet nothing about it felt heavy. Instead, the darkness had softened into a deep, velvety blue, the kind that feels less like the absence of light and more like the quiet embrace of something safe. Above the clouds, the moon must have been wandering, but here, beneath the blanket of rain, the world lived inside a tender twilight that never quite tipped toward shadow. The bus stop continued its steady companionship with the night. The person sitting there, still beneath the shelter, still unhurried, began to settle into the sort of stillness that comes only when the body forgets that it's supposed to stay braced. Their legs stretched slightly, one foot sliding forward a little, finding a natural place to rest. Their back curved against the bench in a position that wasn't perfect posture, but was honest comfort. It was the sort of posture people rarely allowed themselves in busy moments. Outside the glass, raindrops continued their endless migration downward, tracing thin, shimmering trails. Each path was unique, yet every droplet ultimately joined the others along the same slow journey to the bottom edge. There was something reassuring about that. Different beginnings, shared endings, all of it quiet, unforced. The road beyond remained nearly empty. The town had surrendered itself to night, not reluctantly, but willingly, as though recognizing the quiet importance of rest. Houses stood in patient rows farther down the street, dim lights tucked gently into windows, curtains drawn just enough to suggest privacy without shutting out the world completely. Somewhere, A lamp glowed behind lace curtains, softly illuminating a table set with books and a teacup. Somewhere else, a television murmured at a low volume, its sound dulled even further by the rain. People rested in their own ways, some quietly, some distractedly, but all under the same blanket of gentle weather. The bus stop, with its curved roof and glass walls, remained a small sanctuary at the edge of all that. The person watched the puddles continue to form and merge. The largest puddle had now grown into a small reflective pool, stretched across part of the road like polished stone. Every raindrop sent out widening circles across its surface, each ripple gently erasing the last. It was mesmerizing. Their eyes traced the ripples until the world beyond them blurred slightly, not from strain, but from deep relaxation. The mind had stopped gripping things tightly. Thoughts came now like passing birds, landing for a few moments before lifting away again. They weren't trying to solve life anymore. They weren't replaying conversations. They weren't measuring themselves against expectations. They were just watching rain. The shelter creaked gently again as the wind shifted, a familiar sound. The kind of soft wooden murmur that comes from something long accustomed to weather and time. The structure had held against years of storms, years of heat, years of passing footsteps and waiting hearts. It had become patient through experience. A small patch of condensation formed on the glass near where the person's shoulder rested, fogging slightly with each breath. The warmth of their presence left faint imprints, temporary signatures of existence that would vanish as soon as the air cooled again. There was something deeply soothing about impermanence here. Nothing demanded to stay forever. Nothing insisted on significance. Things came, rested, left quietly. A faint tinkering sound drifted from somewhere down the road. The delicate noise of raindrops striking loose bits of metal. Maybe an old gutter or a forgotten sign. The sound wove itself into the rain's rhythm, a small accent rather than a disruption. Another bus eventually appeared, slower than the earlier ones, as though it too had decided to move more gently through the evening. Its headlights painted wide arcs of light that shimmered across the wet street, then rolled gracefully along the glass of the shelter. The vehicle paused, doors opening in their soft, habitual way. The person inside the shelter glanced up again, more from curiosity than consideration. The interior of the bus glowed like a moving cocoon, rows of empty seats, faint reflections, the quiet hum of an engine that didn't seem to mind working late. The driver waited, patient as always. There was no pressure, no tapping, no expectation. After a brief shared silence, the person gave a small nod, not no, exactly, but not yet. The driver smiled slightly, just enough to show understanding. then guided the bus back into motion. Its sound faded almost immediately into the rain, leaving only gentleness behind. The bus stop absorbed the moment easily, as though it had rehearsed this scene many times, and perhaps it had, with countless others over the years. Somewhere beyond the fields, the faint call of a night bird carried across the damp air. The sound wasn't sharp or lonely. It simply marked its place in the night, like a soft reminder that life continued everywhere, quietly. The person leaned forward now, elbows resting lightly on their knees. Their gaze followed the lines of the road, stretching into the mist on both sides, each direction disappearing peacefully into distance. Instead of choosing one and worrying about the consequences, they let the question dissolve. For once, not knowing the path didn't feel frightening. It felt open. Their breath grew even slower, the gentle rise and fall of their chest almost cinched with the falling rain. Shoulders dropped yet another subtle inch, as though new layers of invisible weight were lifting away. A memory surfaced, not sharply, not intrusively, just softly unfolding in the back of their mind. Rain earlier in life, a younger version of themselves waiting at another stop, or perhaps a porch, watching the storm. Back then, the world had felt wide, possibilities endless, consequences forgivable. Rain had seemed magical, turning ordinary streets into reflective lakes and rooftops into percussion instruments. Life had hardened slightly since then, responsibilities stacking, decisions accumulating, expectations tangling like vines. But here, on this night, in this quiet town, the same gentle rain whispered the same old truth. You are allowed to slow down. The thought wasn't spoken, yet it filled the shelter comfortably. The person took in another breath, deeper this time, letting it expand their lungs fully, letting it out slowly through parted lips. Somewhere down the road, a streetlight flickered, then steadied. The tiny hiccup of electricity, not disruptive at all, just another small moment in a larger calm. Across from the bus stop, the garden fence gleamed, beads of rain clinging to its wooden rails. A slug traced a slow, glistening path along the top edge, unbothered by the weather, moving with a patience that seemed to match the entire evening. Inside the shelter, a small leaf blew in through the open side, skidding softly across the ground before coming to rest near the bench. It lay there quietly, as though glad to have found shelter too. The person bent forward slightly and nudged it gently with their shoe, not dismissively, just acknowledging it, then let it be. A train horn sounded far in the distance, its tone softened almost beyond recognition by the layers of rain between. Instead of sounding loud or industrial, it arrived like a low note in a lullaby, fading into the horizon. More minutes passed, or perhaps half an hour, Time didn't announce itself here. If a clock had been present, it would have seemed unnecessary. The night unfolded organically, moments following one another, as leaves drift follow currents in water. Without struggle, the person eventually leaned their head back, eyes drifting half closed. They were not asleep, not yet. But they were floating near that quiet border where thoughts become images and breath becomes rhythm. In this soft state, the world around them seemed to deepen. Every sound took on a warm quality, the rain on glass, the soft swish of wind across the shelter's posts, the distant murmur of water collecting in gutters. Their heartbeat slowed, matching the cadence of the rain's steady fall. One drop, a second, a third. The mind, usually so full, now held only one simple awareness. It is peaceful here. A stray cat appeared at the edge of the scene, stepping lightly across the wet pavement. Its paws landed carefully, avoiding deeper puddles with practiced skill. The cat paused near the bus stop, blinked once at the person inside, and then settled under the far corner of the shelter roof, curling into a small circle. It wasn't seeking attention, just dryness, just warmth. The person noticed and smiled gently, the soft kind of smile reserved for small, harmless visitors. They didn't reach out, didn't disturb the quiet. They simply shared the shelter, as easily as the night shared its calm. The rain began to change slightly, not heavier, not louder, but more delicate somehow, like a whispering drizzle rather than full drops. The sound softened further, becoming a silken background rather than a rhythm. The air turned cooler, brushing gently across skin. The person drew their coat a little closer, not out of discomfort, but out of instinct. The motion itself was slow, careful, matching the overall mood. Above, clouds shifted in subtle waves. Though unseen, the moon's position influenced their texture, causing faint silver undertones to appear along some of their edges. The shelter caught those shades and reflected them faintly across the pavement below. Everything here carried traces of light, but never harsh light, only softened, muted illumination like memory. The cat's breathing slowed, the person's did too, and the bus stop kept watch, silent, steady, dependable. There was no story to untangle, no lesson to extract, no revelation demanding recognition. Instead, the night seemed to whisper that peace doesn't always come from understanding. Sometimes it comes from simply letting the world exist around you, untouched. Another distant vehicle passed eventually. This time a delivery truck, moving quietly through its late route. The tires brushed through shallow water, and the sound lingered only a moment before dissolving like sugar into tea. The person closed their eyes, not fully, just enough for the world to blur pleasantly, as though viewed through gently frosted glass. Behind their eyelids, shapes formed and drifted, the way clouds might drift across a daytime sky. They didn't cling to any of them. They watched from inside, letting their imagination soften in the same way the rain softened the streets. Their thoughts became tactile, the feeling of shelter, the comfort of being unseen but not alone, the tenderness of existing in a world that wasn't demanding anything. The bus stop sighed again, really just the wood shifting slightly, but it felt like companionship. The person's head tilted to the side, resting lightly against the wall. If someone had walked past then, they might have assumed the person was sleeping, and perhaps, in a quiet way, they were. Not the deep, heavy sleep of complete surrender, but the drifting, restful state that lies between waking and dreaming, the place where awareness loosens its grip and trust quietly takes its place. Rain tapped on the roof. Wind whispered through the small opening. The cat twitched its tail once, then settled again. The world slowed, even slower than before. Somewhere far off, the faint hum of a distant highway hummed calmly, a constant reminder that life elsewhere continued, even while here. Time seemed to sit down beside the traveler and simply breathe with them. Not everything needed to be done. Not every question needed answering tonight. Sometimes resting was the answer. Within the glass shelter, within the quiet field-lined road, within the gentle weathered heart of nighttime, this truth lingered softly, like perfume in air. The world will wait for you. Minutes layered over one another like silk cloth draped gently across a chair. Nothing snagged, nothing rushed. Even gravity seemed kinder here. The person eventually opened their eyes again, not startled, not confused, simply returning from inside themselves with renewed softness. They looked at their surroundings with the same expression one might give a dear friend, grateful, unguarded, warm. A small stream of water trickled down the side gutter beside the bus stop, winding through tiny cracks in the pavement. The stream glowed slightly golden as lamplight touched it, turning the narrow path into something almost magical. They watched it for a long while. It had no destination worth noting, no clear route, just a gentle downhill path, and yet it moved anyway, with grace, without resistance. The rain's consistency eased even more now, moving toward that thin whisper, soft drizzle that often marks the late hours of a passing weather front. The sound changed again, lighter, higher, like fingertips brushing linen. Above the road, a faint break formed in the clouds. Not large, just a small opening. Through it, a sliver of moonlight filtered down, touching the wet asphalt with a subtle, pearly highlight. It didn't transform the night. It simply added another layer of gentle beauty to it. The person noticed and felt something inside them respond, not with excitement, but with quiet appreciation. Everything tonight was teaching the same silent lesson. Life doesn't always need fixing. Sometimes it just needs witnessing. The cat stretched, stood, shook tiny droplets from its whiskers, and moved away, disappearing into the brush toward the garden. Its departure was as quiet as its arrival, leaving behind only the memory of shared shelter. The bus stop remained, and the rain, softer now, continued to fall in patient, delicate threads. The traveler breathed deeply again, feeling an almost invisible shift inside, a release they hadn't even realized they'd been holding. Whatever had weighed on them earlier now seemed less like a burden and more like a distant shape seen across a lake, still present, but softened by reflection and distance. They looked at their hands, relaxed, open, resting quietly, and realized how rare this stillness had become in their life. The night didn't judge. It simply offered itself, and they accepted. That acceptance, quiet, gentle, felt like healing, though the word itself never formed in their mind. It didn't need to. The body understood on its own. The fields breathed. The lamps glowed. The road listened. And the bus stop, faithful guardian of unhurried moments, held the silence like a soft, worn blanket. The rain, slowing further, whispered an invitation not through words, but through texture and sound. Stay, rest, let everything soften. And for now, without hesitation, without guilt, they did. The rain had become part of the night now, not something separate from it, but woven into its fabric, like quiet threads of silver stitched across the dark. It whispered along the pavement, wrapped itself around lampposts, slid over rooftops, and gathered softly beneath the sheltered canopy of the bus stop. Time had taken on that unhurried quality that only rainy evenings seemed to understand, as though clocks had agreed to let the world breathe a little slower, a little deeper, without insisting on deadlines or expectations. The benches were warm now from being used, from being shared, from stories resting upon them like invisible blankets. The glass panels glimmered with beads of rain, each drop carrying its own tiny reflection of golden light, before sliding slowly downward in graceful, thoughtful lines. The soft hum of the distant city had faded into something more like a lullaby, and the bus stop, small, ordinary, unnoticed during busy mornings, felt almost like a little sanctuary, a pause that the world had quietly placed in the middle of everything. You noticed how your shoulders had loosened without you realizing, how the space across your chest felt open, how your thoughts had began moving slower, like the raindrops themselves. Not gone, not forced away, just softened, just quieter. Across from you sat the older man who had arrived earlier, the one who carried himself like someone who had learned to live gently with the passage of time. He had spoken once or twice, when the conversation had felt natural, but now he seemed content to simply listen to the rain, with the faintest smile resting comfortably at the corner of his mouth. Beside the man, the notebook girl, the one who had been writing so carefully, so thoughtfully, had folded her pages closed. The notebook sat safely in her lap, as though it was something alive that needed rest as much as she did. Her gaze drifted outward, but it carried the softness of someone who was no longer searching, only noticing. And near the edge of the shelter, the traveler with the suitcase had leaned his head back against the panel, eyes half closed, posture loose, breath steady. Whatever roads he had traveled before arriving here seemed, for this moment, entirely unimportant. The simple act of waiting was enough. Every now and then, a bus rolled by, not the one anyone was waiting for, and yet, rather than disappointment, each passing bus brought with it a gentle reassurance. There will always be another chance, another moment, another way forward. The signs lit up, then dimmed again. Tires rippled softly through puddles. Doors opened, doors closed. The glow of interior lights warmed the night briefly before sliding away again, like lanterns drifting farther downstream. Inside this small world, the rhythm continued. Rain, breath, quiet. Rain, breath, quiet. The pages of the notebook rustled as the girl finally spoke, her voice tiny but steady, like a whisper wrapped in calm. "Do you ever feel?" she asked gently, not looking at anyone in particular, as if waiting is its own kind of place. The older man nodded very slowly, not out of habit, but with the thoughtful consideration of someone who understood the meaning beneath the question. "Yes," he replied softly, "a place where things untangle." His words didn't try to solve anything. They didn't push or insist. They simply landed softly between all of you, like another raindrop joining the rest. And the silence that followed didn't feel empty, it felt held. You watched the reflections stretching across the road, the lamps painting long amber ribbons that trembled gently with every raindrop. Each small tremor seemed like a reminder that stillness isn't always motionless. Sometimes it's just motion that has learned to be patient. At some point, you realized the bus stop had gathered a faint, special glow of its own, not bright, not obvious, but warm like the inside of a lantern. Perhaps it was the lights, perhaps the rain, perhaps the way everyone here seemed to be letting go, just a little, of whatever they carried. The world outside continued to exist: traffic, apartments, windows lit with quiet evening lives. And yet, in here, everything had slowed into something softer, something kinder. The traveler eventually opened his eyes and exhaled with a faint smile. the kind of smile that arrives when a worry loosens its grip. "I've been chasing schedules for months," he said quietly, half to himself. "Strange how resting at a bus stop feels like the first right timing I've had in a while." The girl nodded, thoughtful, while the rain tapped its steady answer. "You noticed your own breathing again, how each inhale felt like fresh night air washing peacefully through you, and each exhale felt like something heavy dissolving, something you didn't need to hold anymore." Around you, raindrops continued writing their quiet script on the glass. Streetlights dimmed, then glowed, then dimmed again. A cat darted across the street, paused under a bench, then curled up against the edge of the shelter, letting the canopy shield it from the clouds. Even the animals seemed to trust this little corner of the world. A soft breeze drifted through, carrying the scent of wet leaves, damp earth, and that uniquely comforting fragrance that only rainfall seems to bring, something ancient, natural, and endlessly reassuring. It moved like a cool hand smoothing across a tired forehead. The older man leaned slightly forward, elbows resting on his knees, voice thoughtful and unhurried. "Rain has a way," he murmured, of reminding us that even the sky needs to let go sometimes. No one argued. No one needed to. Somewhere down the street, a window closed gently. Somewhere farther, a train hummed faintly through the night. The sound of footsteps came and went, soft, unintrusive, as though they were part of the night's music rather than interruptions. Everything blended into a kind of quiet orchestration, and the bus stop itself became something more than a place to wait. It became a pause, a breath, a space where thoughts arrived softer, slower, easier. You let your gaze drift toward the horizon, where streetlights dissolved into layers of soft mist. The horizon no longer felt like something distant or urgent. It felt peaceful, like the edge of a dream you could step into whenever you were ready. Another bus arrived, longer than the previous ones, with windows glowing like soft lanterns moving through the night. Its doors opened with a gentle sigh, releasing warm air that carried faint echoes of hushed conversation and soft overhead lights. No one moved. The driver smiled politely, glanced at the quiet group, and then, seeing that everyone seemed content to simply stay, closed the doors again. The bus drifted away as quietly as it had come, leaving the world exactly as calm as before. It was then, without fanfare, without drama, that something subtle settled into your chest. A feeling that you didn't have to hurry, that wherever you were meant to go, you would arrive, and it would be okay. The notebook girl whispered something almost inaudible, not expecting anyone to respond. Maybe the bus isn't the destination tonight. You didn't fully understand what she meant, yet somehow you did. Out on the road, puddles mirrored the lamps like tiny, golden galaxies, constellations scattered across asphalt. The rain softened every sound so effortlessly that even distant horns seemed to melt into the background, like gentle echoes rather than sharp interruptions. The traveler closed his eyes again, but this time not from exhaustion, from peace, and the older man rested back, folding his hands comfortably in his lap, as though he had seen this kind of moment many times before and cherished each one. The night deepened, and the rain began to lighten, not stopping, but easing, as though the sky itself were calming alongside you. Drops became fewer, slower, softer. Their rhythm gentled into something like a lullaby. You noticed how the glass now carried longer, slower rivulets, each drop traveling its own patient path before reaching the ledge and disappearing into the night with a hushed, contented release. The cat purred quietly beneath the bench. A small leaf rotated slowly in a puddle. A lamppost hummed gently overhead, steady and kind. Everything existed simply, peacefully, without needing to be any different. The older man inhaled, exhaled, and spoke one last time, his voice no louder than the rain itself. "Sometimes," he said, "the quiet places in between are where we finally hear ourselves rest." He didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. His words joined the rainfall, and the bus stop, familiar, ordinary, glowing softly beneath the rain-washed lamps, felt like the safest place in the world for this moment. And so you sat there, breathing, listening, allowing the night to cradle you gently, knowing that for now, the only thing you needed to do was simply be here, letting the rain soften every sound, letting the world move slowly, letting your mind ease into the calm of the waiting and the quiet trust that you didn't have to rush anywhere at all. The night, kind, patient, and endlessly gentle, wrapped itself around you like the softest blanket imaginable, and time, at the rain-softened bus stop, continued its slow, soothing, peaceful drift. By the time the night reached its deepest shade of blue, the rain had turned into something almost weightless, not quite a drizzle, not quite a mist, more like a soft breath lingering in the air. The bus stop, washed clean and wrapped in the glow of the street lamps, felt even quieter than before, as though the world had taken a long, peaceful sigh. The streets around you shimmered gently, lined with small pockets of pooled light, each reflecting the sky like a piece of calm water. The puddles had grown still. The tiny ripples that had once danced across them now rested, like quiet ponds tucked between cobblestones. Beyond the shelter, the night stretched out, not vast and intimidating, but tender and spacious, like a room that exists only for resting minds. You sat back deeper against the bench, feeling the subtle embrace of the cool air against your skin. The material beneath you was smooth and familiar now. The same bench that might feel unremarkable during busy mornings had become something almost comforting, a place that held the memory of peaceful moments. Your breathing matched the night again, slow, unforced, unhurried. Each inhale gathered the faint scent of rain and earth, and each exhale released another thread of thought you no longer needed to hold on to. Somewhere inside you, the constant spinning of the day had settled, as if the gears that turned endlessly had found a gentler rhythm. The cat beneath the bench shifted and tucked its paws beneath its body, tail curled neatly around its side. It blinked slowly, as cats often do when they feel perfectly safe, and settled into stillness. Its quiet presence added another layer of calm, a tiny reminder that rest isn't something you earn, but something the night invites you into. The older man had leaned back, eyes closed, head tilted just slightly. His face, framed by years and softened lines, carried the relaxed expression of someone remembering good things, warm kitchens, quiet evenings, roads taken without regret. Every so often, his breath deepened, then smoothed again, moving in harmony with the hush of the rain. The notebook girl reopened her journal, not to write anything new, but simply to hold it, fingertips brushing gently across the worn edges. The corners of her mouth lifted in that peaceful way people smile when they realize something important has finally loosened inside them. Whatever she had been wrestling with earlier no longer appeared sharp or hurried. It had become something she could lay gently to rest for now, like a page she could close without forcing. The traveler with the suitcase had moved closer to the center of the shelter, using his bag as a comfortable footrest. His eyes remained half-lidded, gaze unfocused, as if he were already wandering through some quiet daydream. The weight that had followed him, schedules, unknowns, destinations, seemed far lighter, like luggage placed gently on the ground instead of carried on tired shoulders. And you noticed a stillness spreading through you that wasn't empty at all. It was full of softness, full of night, full of quiet assurance. Even your thoughts, those drifting shapes that often crowd the edges of your awareness, now floated slowly like leaves lazily circling the surface of a pond. Nothing demanded resolution. Nothing rushed to speak louder than the rain. Above, the lamppost hummed again, that steady, friendly hum, almost like a lullaby threaded through wires. The circle of light beneath it glowed warmly, creating a delicate halo around drifting droplets. Every now and then, one drop would catch the light so perfectly that it shimmered before falling, like a tiny falling star with nowhere urgent to be. Farther down the road, another bus appeared, moving with that unhurried glide that buses take late at night, when streets are open and patient. Its headlights brushed across the puddles, painting them silver for a brief moment before dimming out again. As it neared the stop, the gentle hiss of brakes whispered into the quiet, soft and low. The doors opened. Warm air spilled out, tinged with the faint scent of fabric, rubber floors, and the quiet murmur of quiet travelers riding somewhere far beyond your thoughts. The interior lights glowed a soft amber, illuminating empty seats that seemed to welcome anyone who wished to board. But nobody moved, not out of hesitation, but out of contentment. You realized that no one here felt the need to leave immediately. The waiting itself, once something that might have felt like interruption, had become the experience, the place, the calm, the driver. Seeing the peacefulness gathered beneath the shelter, simply nodded once, as though acknowledging something unspoken. The doors whispered closed again, and the bus slipped away into the distance, tail lights glowing softly like two small embers carried down a winding river. The world returned to quiet, deeper now, safer, friendlier. The older man opened one eye briefly, noticed the bus had gone, and smiled to himself. "There's always another one," he murmured. His voice blended gently into the night, almost indistinguishable from the softened rainfall. There was no urgency in his tone, only trust. The kind of trust that grows from many seasons lived, and from understanding that not everything requires chasing. The notebook girl looked up at the sky, as if something in the clouds had spoken directly to her. Her shoulders dropped a little more, and she breathed out, long, slow, relieving, as if she had just let go of a story she'd been holding too tightly. You listened to all of it, the rain, the distant hum of the city, the breath of the people nearby, and noticed how easily your body responded. Muscles softened, thoughts slowed, heartbeat found an easy rhythm. The top of your mind, the place where worry usually sits and buzzes, had gone beautifully quiet. Another breeze flowed through, softer than before. It wrapped around your arms and across your chest, cool yet soothing, like a whispered reassurance passing across your skin. You noticed small details you hadn't before. A single raindrop trembling at the tip of a leaf. A tiny crack along the pavement carrying a narrow ribbon of water. A paper flyer pinned to the post, edges damp and gently curling. Even these ordinary things seemed peaceful now, as though the entire world had agreed that tonight was meant for slowing down. A distant clock tower rang quietly, muffled by the softened rain, and it didn't sound like a reminder of passing time. It sounded like another gentle note in the night's lullaby, blending seamlessly into everything else. The traveler shifted slightly, then chuckled under his breath, Not loud, not disruptive, just a soft sound of pleasant realization. "You know," he said, voice just above a whisper, "I'm starting to think I've been rushing past moments like this my whole life." No one answered right away. The response came instead from the night itself, a deeper, more serene stretch of silence, as if the world nodded in agreement. The older man eventually spoke again, slow, thoughtful, unrushed. "Most of us have," he said, "until something quieter shows us how to sit still again." He closed his eyes fully then, as though the conversation itself had reached its natural resting point, and gradually, almost imperceptibly, the world around the bus stop began to dim even further, not into darkness, but into softness. The lamps retained their glow, but even that glow felt gentler, less like illumination, more like a comforting presence watching over stillness. The rain, now barely more than a whisper, wrapped every sound in velvet. Passing cars became distant sighs. A bicycle bell, faintly chimed somewhere down the street, softened into a gentle echo that faded before it could disturb the air. Everything felt pillowed, cushioned, gracefully muted. Your eyelids carried that familiar, heavy warmth, the kind that doesn't force you to sleep, but invites it. They drifted down halfway, then lifted, then drifted again, moving with the same rhythm as the night. Your body had learned the language of rest, and it spoke it fluently now. There was no destination tugging at you anymore, no unfinished task waiting impatiently, just the quiet truth of the moment. You were here, and being here, simply sitting beneath the softened rain, was enough. The notebook girl finally closed her book entirely. She placed her hand gently over the cover, not to protect the pages, but to thank them somehow for holding what they needed to hold. She leaned back and rested her head against the glass, gaze softened into dreamlike blur. The cat beneath the bench gave a contented stretch, then relaxed again, completely trusting the shelter of the night. The wind shifted slightly, carrying with it the faint, delicate fragrance of distant flowers, perhaps from a small garden nearby, perhaps from someone's quiet balcony. It mingled with the scent of rain, creating an aroma that felt both grounding and dreamlike, like breathing in memory and comfort at the same time. You realized then that the bus stop, that simple structure, had turned into something almost sacred, a resting point not only for travelers, but for minds that have been walking all day long through busy thoughts and crowded concerns. A sanctuary hidden in plain sight. Another bus approached, this one slower, older, moving with a gentle hum. Its headlights brushed across the shelter, touching each face with a soft momentary glow. When it came to a stop, the doors opened with familiar quiet grace. This time, the traveler looked at the bus thoughtfully, not out of pressure, but out of curiosity. He turned to the small group, offering a warm, grateful smile. "I think this might be mine," he said softly, and somehow, the moment didn't feel like separation. It felt like continuation. The older man opened his eyes and nodded kindly. "May the rest of your night be gentle," he said. The notebook girl lifted her hand in a quiet wave, the kind that holds gratitude without needing words. You felt the same warmth move through your chest, that quiet appreciation for someone who had shared space with you peacefully, even if only for this short time. The traveler stood slowly, unhurried, picked up his suitcase, and stepped onto the bus. He didn't look anxious. He didn't glance nervously at the sign. He simply trusted that wherever the bus took him, he would meet the night with the same calm he had found here. The doors side closed. The bus rolled forward. Its lights melted into the distance, and still the bus stop remained peaceful. The older man rested his hands calmly across his lap again and allowed his eyes to drift shut. He seemed as rooted as the lampposts, as timeless as the rain-washed pavement, as though he could sit here forever if he wished, carrying quiet wisdom simply through being present. A single leaf floated down from a distant tree and landed near your shoe, glossy and rain-kissed. You watched it rest there, peaceful and unbothered, like a tiny green boat choosing a soft harbor. Your thoughts grew lighter, softer than feathers, drifting gently away from effort, away from loops, away from noise. Inside, there was space, spacious silence, the kind of stillness that doesn't feel empty, but deeply full. The notebook girl eventually stood, gathering her things gently, as though careful not to disturb the air. "This helped," she whispered, almost to herself, though the night heard it and carried it softly upward. She placed the notebook into her bag, took one last long breath of rain, cooled air, and walked slowly out from the shelter. Her footsteps along the damp path made only the faintest sounds, absorbed lovingly by the softened world. She didn't hurry. She didn't look back. She carried calm with her, as though the quiet of the bus stop had become something she could take along, tucked safely into the rhythm of her heart. And then there were two, you and the older man. The rain tapered into the lightest mist imaginable, just enough to kiss the surface of the glass and shimmer along the rim of puddles. The clouds parted in small, delicate breaks, revealing tiny scattered stars, not brilliant, not bright, but subtle and reassuring, like nightlights placed carefully in the sky. The older man opened his eyes again and looked toward the quiet sky. "Beautiful," he said softly. It didn't matter whether he meant the stars, the night, the peace, or this simple moment itself. It was all beautiful. He turned his gaze gently toward you, kind, understanding, unintrusive. You don't always have to figure everything out at once, he said, voice barely above the hush of the night. Sometimes you just have to sit with the rain and let it teach you how to soften. There was nothing to reply, and he didn't expect an answer. He simply smiled, the warm, contented smile of someone who had offered something from the heart, and leaned back once more, closing his eyes comfortably. Minutes, or perhaps longer, passed. Time felt shapeless, fluid, serene. You might have drifted a little. You might have wandered quietly through thoughts that were no longer heavy. You might have rested on the edge of dreams without crossing fully into them. Eventually, another bus appeared, not loudly, not insistently. It approached with a calm presence, as though it too understood that this night required gentleness. The doors opened with their familiar sigh. The older man stood slowly, gracefully, as though rising from a favorite chair. He gave the bus stop one final look, as if acknowledging the quiet companionship it had given him through the rain. He turned toward you and offered a final, peaceful nod. "Safe travels," he said softly, though he could just as easily have meant safe dreams. Then he stepped aboard, found a seat near the window, and rested his hand against the glass. The bus glided forward, and within moments, its warm interior lights faded into the night. You were alone now, but the word alone did not feel lonely. It felt peaceful, spacious, free. The bus stop remained beneath the golden lamps, under the lingering whisper of rain, exactly as gentle as it had been all along. The quiet around you deepened into something almost sacred, like the last soft notes of a lullaby settling into silence. Your eyes felt wonderfully heavy. Your breath had become a slow river. Your body rested like a stone sinking gently into warm sand. The world beyond the shelter stretched outward. Roads leading everywhere, buses traveling to places you didn't need to think about yet. None of it tugged at you. None of it demanded decision. For now, there was only this: a calm night, a softened world, a bus stop where rain had turned every sound into comfort. You leaned back, let your head rest softly, and allowed your thoughts to grow hazy at the edges, as if gently dimming the lights inside your mind. The lamppost glowed like a guardian star. The mist curled slowly through the air. Far, far away, another bus horn sounded. Not sharp, not loud, just a distant note floating through the rain-washed night. And as your eyes finally began to close fully, the last thing you felt was a deep, quiet assurance, as steady and gentle as the rain itself. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to slow. You are allowed to simply be here, exactly as you are. While the night keeps watch and the softened world cradles you, gently, endlessly, peacefully, like the hush of rain at the quietest bus stop in the world. Let the night be gentle now. You've walked softly through rain-washed streets, through quiet thoughts, through a world where sound becomes kindness and time slows enough to breathe. And as this story settles towards silence, you don't need to hold on to anything anymore. Not the scenes, not the ideas, not even the words. Just let them drift like mist lifting from the pavement. Feel how the quiet lingers around you, how it wraps softly like a familiar blanket, how it seems to know exactly what your mind needs. Less effort, less thinking, more softness. The bus stop fades gently into memory. The rain becomes background comfort. The lamplight turns into a warm glow behind closed eyes. And you remain here safe in your own space, supported, grounded, still. Take a slow breath in without forcing. Let it leave gently, as if the night is helping you exhale. Again, softer this time. In like calm arriving, out like worry loosening its hold. Notice how each breath settles deeper, almost instinctively. Sleep doesn't need to be chased. It comes when the mind is quiet enough to welcome it, and you've already moved so beautifully into that quiet. You did not have to solve anything tonight. You did not have to prove anything. You did not have to push your thoughts into order. You simply let them soften, and that is enough. If any thoughts return, let them float by like reflections in puddles. They don't need answers. They don't need energy. Just gentle acknowledgement and then space to drift away. You are safe. Safe to rest, safe to release, safe to let your body take over the work of sleeping. Feel the weight of your body sinking slightly, supported by whatever you're lying on. The mattress, the pillow, the blankets, all of them holding you, the way the night held the bus stop quietly, without question, without pressure. Your shoulders loosen, your jaw softens, the small muscles around your eyes relax. Your hands grow heavier, then lighter, then disappear from attention altogether. Your mind rests the way rain rests on glass, still, present, undisturbed. Outside, the world continues in slow motion. Night birds dreaming, distant lights whispering. The sky quietly watching over everything. You don't have to be anywhere else. You don't have to keep track of time. The night is long enough. The rest is deep enough. And you are gently carried through it. There is nothing you could forget, nothing you could miss, nothing you must control. Even if tomorrow has tasks, they belong to tomorrow, and tomorrow always arrives more kindly when tonight has been allowed to soften. Let the edges of the day blur. Let the mind dim its lamps one by one. Let the rhythm inside you fall into that natural, steady lull. If fragments of the story return, the lamplight, the rain, the benches, the quiet faces, Let them dissolve into texture, into color, into a peaceful feeling, rather than something to follow. They're simply gentle companions walking you toward rest. And if sleep comes in small waves, drifting forward and drifting back, that's all right too. The night is patient. There's no finish line, just deeper and deeper comfort. You are wrapped in the same softness that quieted those rain-soaked streets, a softness that asks nothing, expects nothing, simply stays beside you. Breathe once more, slower than before. Let the breath fall out naturally, longer on the exhale. Notice how your body responds, how it knows the way. Your thoughts grow quieter. The space between them grows wider, like rooms opening, like windows closing softly. You may feel yourself hovering at the doorway between awake and asleep, that beautiful twilight place where everything is gentle and the world loses its sharpness. Stay there as long as you like. There is no rush to cross it. Sleep will reach for you when it's ready, and when it does, it will gather you easily. And if you wake for a moment later, that's okay too. Nights are made of many layers of rest, and every layer counts. Every softened breath nourishes you. Every moment of stillness refills something quiet inside. Let your heart take its own slow pace. Let your body unwind where it needs to. Let your mind trust the silence. You are not alone in the night. The world, in its own quiet ways, rests alongside you. Rain softens sounds. Darkness softens edges. Sleep softens thoughts. And you are gently softening into peace. Feel gratitude if you wish, not forced, not loud, just a small warmth inside. Gratitude for rest, for safe spaces, for moments when everything finally quiets. Gratitude for the simple, powerful act of letting go. Nothing is demanded of you, only this: a slow breath, a deeper calm, a safe descent into dreams. Soon, words dissolve entirely, leaving only sensation. Then even sensation loosens, until all that remains is sleep. And so, as the night settles fully, allow yourself to drift the way raindrops drift along calm glass, guided effortlessly downward, carried gently by gravity, finding the stillness they were always meant for. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to feel calm. You are allowed to sleep deeply, tenderly, peacefully. The world can wait. For now, there is only quiet, only softness, only sleep, approaching slowly, covering you gently, and holding you through the night. Good night.